There are towns you pass through and forget about by the next gas station, and then there are towns that stay in your bones. Miller's Grove was one of those. A farming town, 30 miles off the highway, where the smell of manure mixed with sweet corn, and the sky seemed wider than anywhere else. The people were simple, friendly on the surface, suspicious underneath. And every fall, a scarecrow went missing. No one liked to talk about it much. The old-timers said it had been happening for as long as anyone could remember. A scarecrow vanished from its post, and not long after, someone in town did too. Maybe a drifter, maybe a housewife, maybe the local mailman. They just weren't there anymore. Folks kept their mouths shut and their heads down. That's how Miller's Grove survived. But in the fall of 1993, the harvest man came for someone everyone noticed. Eddie Turner was 14 and restless. His dad worked long hours at the feed store. His mom cleaned houses. Eddie was too young for real farm work and too old to be running with kids. So he roamed. That's how he found himself biking down County Road 6 one September afternoon, the cornfields high on either side, the air smelling like dust and sunburn. That's when he saw the scarecrow. It stood crooked in a field that had gone half wild, the kind of place where the farmer had either died or given up. Its head was a burlap sack, sagging heavy, like it was full of something more than straw. Its arms stretched wide, dressed in an old flannel shirt so faded it looked like skin. Eddie swore its head turned a little as he pedaled by. He told himself it was just the wind. That night at dinner, Eddie mentioned it. "Don't go down County 6 anymore," his dad said, stabbing at his meatloaf. "Why not?" Eddie asked. His mom gave his dad a sharp look. He sighed. "Because I said so, that's why." But Eddie had been raised in Miller's Grove. He knew the stories, the whispers told in barns and basements when the grown-ups weren't listening. Every fall, the harvest man walked. And once you saw him, he might see you back. The scarecrow on County 6 wasn't the only one. Every farm had them. Stiff guardians, with their blank sack faces and outstretched arms. You got used to them, the way you got used to the smell of pig shit or the rattle of locusts. But this one felt different. Eddie couldn't stop thinking about it. He biked back 2 days later. The flannel shirt was gone. The scarecrow wore something new, a denim jacket that looked awfully like the one Mr. Cole, the mailman, wore every day on his route. By Saturday, Mr. Cole was gone. "Probably ran off," Eddie's mom said when the gossip reached them. A lot of folks leave, but Eddie had seen the scarecrow. The town pretended, the way it always did. Church sermons about God's mysterious plans. Neighbors leaving casseroles on the Cole family's porch. But at night, the grown-ups double-bolted doors and whispered to each other. Eddie started dreaming about the scarecrow. In the dreams, it stood in the middle of the street. No crows around, no wind, just silence. Then it began to walk, its sack head tilted toward him, and underneath, something shifted, not straw, not stuffing, but muscle. He woke one night to the sound of scratching at his window. When he looked, the scarecrow was standing in the field across from his house. He told himself it couldn't be. That field had never had a scarecrow. And yet, there it was. The Harvest Festival came in late September. The whole town gathered at the school gym for pie contests, fiddles, and raffle tickets. Eddie's dad worked security for the beer tent. His mom helped with the bake sale. Eddie wandered the edges, looking for trouble. That's when he noticed Old Man Larkin. He was one of the oldest farmers still alive, bent like a question mark, his face wrinkled like dry earth. Folks said his family had been here when the town was founded. Larkin grabbed Eddie's wrist with surprising strength. "You saw it, didn't you?" he hissed. His breath smelled like sour apples. Eddie froze. "I have. You saw the harvest man." I don't know what you mean." Larkin's eyes glittered. "Don't lie, boy. Once you see him, he sees you. And if he's got your scent, you best pray. He takes one every season, and the town lets him. Better one than all. That's the way it's always been." And he pulled away, his skin crawling. The scarecrow disappeared from the County 6 field a week later. Just gone. And the next day, Eddie's mom didn't come home from her cleaning job. His dad called the police, but they were sluggish, uninterested. Missing people were common here, like potholes and thunderstorms. Eddie knew better. His mom hadn't just left. She'd been taken. That night, Eddie biked to County 6 with a flashlight. The cornfields rustled like whispers. His breath smoked in the cooling air. He found the post where the scarecrow had stood. The rope dangled loose. Then he heard footsteps. Not soft, human footsteps. Heavy, dragging ones. Something moved at the far end of the field. The beam of his flashlight caught burlap, a denim jacket sleeve, and a face that wasn't a face at all, but a sack stuffed too full, twitching like something inside was trying to push out. "Mom," Eddie whispered. The scarecrow tilted its head. He ran. His bike wheels rattled over gravel as the scarecrow stepped onto the road. It didn't chase fast. It didn't need to. Eddie knew it would always be there, waiting, in every field, every corner of his eye. At home, his dad sat at the kitchen table, a bottle of whiskey in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot, wet. Eddie tried to explain, but the words came out broken. His dad slammed his fist down. "Don't you say it," he roared. "Don't you say those goddamn stories." But Eddie saw it in his father's face. He knew. He'd always known. Everyone in Miller's Grove did. The silence wasn't ignorance. It was survival. October came cold and early. Frost rimmed the fields. The scarecrows stayed at their posts, silent sentinels. Eddie avoided them, but it was impossible. They were everywhere. On Halloween night, Eddie dreamed again. This time, his mother's voice came from inside the scarecrow. Muffled, desperate. "Help me, Eddie. Let me out." He woke with his heart hammering. His window was open. On the sill was a handful of straw. By November, the town had moved on. Mrs. Turner's disappearance was just another sad story folded into Miller's Grove. Eddie's dad drowned himself in whiskey. Eddie stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He walked through school like a ghost. And then, one gray morning, people noticed another scarecrow was gone. This time, Eddie didn't wait. He knew what would happen next. That night, his father didn't come home. The final straw broke in Eddie. He biked back to County 6 one last time. The field was empty under a low moon, except for the scarecrow standing in the middle of the dirt road. It was taller now, broader. The denim jacket hung over flannel. And beneath the burlap sack, something shifted, pressed, almost as if a face was trying to scream through. "Dad?" Eddie whispered. The scarecrow's head tilted. Then, slow as the turning of seasons, it lifted one arm and pointed at him. Eddie dropped his bike. His legs wanted to run, but his body froze. The air smelled like rot and dry corn. The harvest man took one step closer. The earth seemed to groan beneath its weight. Another step, and another. Eddie's heart slammed in his chest. He realized the truth in Old Man Larkin's words. Once you see the harvest man, he sees you too. The scarecrow's burlap face split open down the middle, and straw spilled out like blood. Inside, something wet and red moved. Eddie thought he saw his father's eyes. And then, in a voice that was both his dad's and something deeper, older, the scarecrow said, "Your turn." Eddie Turner was gone by the next morning. His bike lay in the ditch on County 6, wheels still spinning when they found it. Folks shook their heads, muttered about tragedy, and put another name on the list of the missing. By the time the first snow fell, a new scarecrow stood in the abandoned field. This one wore a plaid shirt and jeans, and its head sagged heavy on the post, stuffed with more than straw. The town went on, like it always did, and the harvest man waited for next fall. There's a special kind of loneliness that comes from being awake when the whole town sleeps. Jack Mercer knew it well. He was the midnight to dawn DJ for WZON 94.3, the voice of Monroe County, though these days the voice was mostly Jack's. Folks didn't listen to radio anymore, not with cassette decks, CDs, and those shiny new satellite stations coming in. But Jack still spun his records, cued the ads, and filled the air with his gravelly voice. He'd been doing it for 20 years, and though he told himself it was a job like any other, sometimes it felt like being buried alive. It was late September, one of those nights when the rain taps steady on the roof and the streets are empty. Jack was in the booth, a styrofoam cup of coffee cooling beside him, when the static started. He'd been playing Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, but halfway through the signal cracked and fizzed. He frowned. twisted the tuner dial, and the song vanished. What came next wasn't silence, but a voice. "Jack." He froze. The voice was faint, muffled, like someone whispering through cotton. "Jack, can you hear me?" His first thought was prank. Local kids sometimes called in, slurring their words after too many beers. But this voice wasn't coming through the phone lines. It came through the frequency itself, deep in the static. And it was a voice Jack knew. It was his mother. But that was impossible. His mother had been dead 8 years. "Bill's shit," Jack muttered, leaning closer to the console. His heart hammered in his chest. The voice repeated, "Jack, I miss you. I'm cold." The booth felt suddenly too small, too close. Jack sat back hard in his chair, ran a hand through thinning hair. He killed the frequency, switched to a commercial tape, and sat there listening to the jingle about Joe's used cars like it was salvation. But the shaking in his hands wouldn't stop. After his shift, he drove home through rain-slick streets, eyes flicking to every empty intersection like something might step out. His apartment smelled of old smoke and loneliness. He poured a whiskey and told himself it had just been a trick of the signal. Interference. Some trucker's CB radio bouncing back at him. That's all, but part of him knew better. The next night, he went looking for it. Not on purpose. At least that's what he told himself. He spun his records, did his patter, but every time the song ended, he let the tuner drift, searching, waiting. At 2:14 a.m., the static came alive again. This time it wasn't his mother. "Jack," a man's voice rasped. "It's Eddie." Jack's throat went dry. Eddie Kramer had been his best friend in high school. They played guitar in the same garage band, smoked dope behind the bleachers. Eddie had died in a car wreck senior year. "You there, man?" the voice asked. "Feels like I've been waiting forever." Jack's hand hovered over the switch, but he couldn't do it, couldn't turn away. "What is this?" Jack whispered into the mic, forgetting the whole county might be listening. "What are you?" But the voice only laughed, hollow and dry. Word spread fast. Monroe County wasn't big, and by the weekend, calls poured into the station. People wanted to know if it was true, if WZON really had a line to the dead. At first, Jack brushed them off, but then the voices kept coming. Every night. Some were strangers. Some were people Jack remembered from town. A drowned boy from the quarry, a waitress who'd overdosed, an old farmer who'd put a shotgun in his mouth. And then came the requests. "Play my song, Jack," a young woman begged one night. "I want my daddy to hear it." "Tell my wife I forgive her," another whispered. Jack tried to resist, but he was hooked. He played the songs. He read the messages on air. And the listeners came back in droves. The midnight slot, once a graveyard, became the most popular show in the county. Folks sat up with radios pressed to their ears, waiting for their dead. But the dead weren't kind. By October, the voices grew darker. They asked for more than music. "Bring us flowers," one whispered. "Leave them by the water tower. Light a candle in the old church basement." One night, the voice of Jack's mother came again. "Jack, let us in." He felt ice in his bones. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Open the door, Jackie boy. Just a crack. We're so cold." The static roared like wind through a tunnel. Jack yanked his headphones off, but he still heard her, whispering, scratching at the edges of his mind. The town changed. People stopped going to church. Why pray when you could tune in at midnight and hear your loved ones? The graveyard grew wild with weeds, the bars emptied by 11, everyone hurrying home to sit by their radios. Jack became a kind of prophet. Folks left him gifts at the station: pies, quilts, bottles of bourbon. They looked at him with shining eyes, hungry for his next broadcast. But Jack wasn't sleeping anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw static crawling across the inside of his lids. He dreamed of voices, mouths opening in the dark, burlap faces stuffed with straw. Halloween night, the station was alive with callers. People phoned in weeping, begging Jack to connect them with the dead. Jack's hands shook so badly he could barely cue the records. At 3 a.m., the static surged, louder than ever. The glass in the booth rattled. Jack pressed the headphones to his ears and heard them all at once, every voice he'd broadcast, screaming, laughing, crying, a chorus of the dead, and through it, his mother again. "Let us in, Jackie. Open the door." The booth door. He looked. It rattled on its hinges. Something pressed from the other side. a shadow under the crack. Too many feet, too many hands. Jack's heart thundered. He reached for the switch, ready to kill the feed, but the console sparked under his fingers. Smoke curled from the dials. The dead were coming through. They found the station dark the next morning. The booth door was open, splintered like something had forced its way out. The console was melted, wires dangling like entrails, and Jack Mercer was gone. At first, people grieved. But then, at midnight the following night, the static returned. A voice whispered from every radio in Monroe County. "This is Jack Mercer, and you're tuned to WZON, the voice of the dead. We're just getting started." Well, nobody really remembered when the milkman stopped coming. Must have been back in the early 70s, when supermarkets spread and plastic jugs replaced those glass bottles. But in the cul-de-sac of Willow Lane, folks swore they could still smell that faint tang of cream on cold mornings, even when the trucks were long gone. By the fall of 1991, people stopped joking about it, 'cause the milkman came back. Willow Lane was the kind of street built for young families and weekend barbecues. Split-level houses, trimmed lawns, kids on BMX bikes. Mrs. Carter's roses won ribbons at the fair, and Mr. Duggan mowed his grass twice a week just to remind the neighbors how neat a yard could be. And then, one morning in late September, bottles appeared on porches. Tall glass bottles, capped with red foil, sweating in the cold dawn. No one saw who left them. Some kind of nostalgia thing, Mr. Duggan said, twisting the cap. Pratique milk. Probably costs a fortune. But the milk wasn't from any company. The bottles had no labels. The liquid inside wasn't pure white, either. Thicker, with a faint pink swirl that caught the light. The kids drank it first. 8-year-old Tommy Reynolds came to school the next day with milk mustache stains that wouldn't wash off. His teacher, Mrs. Connolly, said his smile looked wrong, too wide, like it didn't fit his face. By the end of the week, half the kids on Willow Lane were drinking from the bottles. They said it tasted sweeter than any milk before, like melted ice cream, like a dream. Their parents tried it too, after a while. Some swore it gave them better sleep. Others said they had the strangest dreams, walking barefoot down endless white hallways, doors opening on either side, voices whispering their names. But a few, like Mrs. Carter, dumped the bottle straight into the drain. She said it smelled of copper, of pennies left in the sun. The milkman himself was first seen by young Sarah Duggan. She woke at dawn to use the bathroom and glanced out her window. He was standing in the street, tall, thin, dressed in spotless white, with a cap pulled low. He held a wire carrier, with bottles clinking inside. When he turned, Sarah swore his face wasn't a face at all, just a blur, like steam rising from pavement. By the time she blinked, he was gone. She told her parents. They hushed her, said it was a dream, but Sarah stopped drinking the milk. The changes began slowly. Tommy Reynolds stopped playing with his friends. He sat in the yard staring at the sun without blinking. Little Anna Patel hummed to herself constantly, the same low tune that made her parents' teeth ache. The Duggan twins stopped fighting altogether, which should have been a blessing, but the way they held hands whispering in unison made Mrs. Duggan cry in the kitchen when no one was looking. And every morning, more bottles appeared, always full, always cold. Mrs. Carter was the first adult to vanish. She'd been outspoken about the milk, even knocking on doors to warn neighbors. "You don't know what you're letting your children drink," she'd said. "It's not natural." Then one morning her porch was spotless. No milk bottles, no mail, no Mrs. Carter. The roses in her front yard wilted overnight, blackened, like frost had touched them. The police came, shrugged, filled out paperwork. People leave all the time, they said, but the neighbors knew better. And still, most of them kept drinking. One night, Mr. Duggan followed the milkman. He waited behind his garage until the white figure appeared, bottles clinking softly. He trailed him down the cul-de-sac, past the mailbox, past the last streetlight. Mr. Duggan's wife said he never came home. In the morning, the Duggan porch held not 2 but 3 bottles, one larger than the others. The liquid inside swore redder than before. By October, Willow Lane had changed. The children grew pale, their eyes ringed in shadow. They spoke less, listened more. Sometimes they gathered at the end of the cul-de-sac at midnight, barefoot in the cold, waiting for something none of the parents dared name. The parents looked sick too, but they couldn't stop. The milk was a craving now, a hunger. They drank in secret, in basements and garages, wiping their mouths before family could see. And the milkman kept coming, always smiling, though no one could quite remember his face. Sarah Duggan stayed awake one night, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She heard the bottles clink outside her window and forced herself to peek. The milkman stood at her porch, taller than she remembered. His arm seemed too long now, the carrier swinging low, bottles rattling like bones. As he bent to place them, his head tilted upward, and though his face was a blur, Sarah swore he looked straight at her. Her window frosted over. The rabbit in her arms grew warm, then damp. When she glanced down, its stuffing had turned to curdled milk, leaking through the seams. She screamed, but no one came. Halloween night, Willow Lane was dark. No trick-or-treaters, no porch lights. The whole cul-de-sac gathered instead in the middle of the street. Children in pajamas, parents with glassy eyes, all clutching bottles to their chests. They formed a circle. The milkman stepped into the center, taller now, impossibly tall, his cap brushing the night sky. His body shimmered like heat waves. The bottles in his carrier glowed faint pink. He raised one bottle high, and every neighbor followed. "Drink," he said, though his voice was not a voice, but the rush of liquid filling their ears. They drank, every last drop. By morning, Willow Lane was silent. Porches held no bottles. Lawns were empty. The houses stood open, doors yawning. The mailman found Sarah's stuffed rabbit in the street, split open, dripping sour milk onto the asphalt. And somewhere beyond town, on some forgotten road, the milkman walked on, his carrier clinking with bottles full and ready, searching for the next cul-de-sac that needed feeding.